On the situation in Gaza, she said that everything she saw is heart-wrenching. The best way to address humanitarian issues is through a political process. Visiting China for the first time after taking office, she saw China's steadfast support for international humanitarian endeavors and looks forward to engaging in multidimensional cooperation with China. President of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mirjana Spoljaric Egger, sat down in an exclusive interview with Leaders Talk.
Hello and welcome to Leaders Talk, where we meet leaders, thinkers, and trailblazers. I'm Zhou Yun. From Afghanistan to Syria and now to Gaza, it mobilizes and dispatches professionals to conduct humanitarian assistance, protecting the victims of armed conflicts. And that very organization is the International Committee of the Red Cross, or ICRC. And our guest today is Mirjana Spoljaric Egger, President of ICRC. Last December, President Spoljaric visited the Gaza Strip and described the situation as everything is collapsing. So how should the international community help to alleviate the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza? In light of unprecedented changes and challenges, what concepts are urgently needed to uphold global peace and development? As an active supporter, participant, and contributor to the international humanitarian cause, in what ways has China been furthering cooperation with the ICRC to advance the cause of human peace and progress? Let's find all those answers in our conversation today. Madam President, thank you so much for joining us on Leaders Talk. So as the chief of ICRC, how do you understand, how do you see these strong tensions on the international scene from a humanitarian standpoint?
It is true that we are observing a growing number of situations of armed violence and conflict, that these situations are fast evolving and creating enormous humanitarian pressures and human suffering, but also a lot of material destruction. What we also see nowadays is how quickly these conflicts escalate and have ripple effects in other regions of the world. What we could see with Ukraine was a food insecurity on the rise in many parts of the world, notably in the Middle East and in Africa. What we see now in Gaza is a lot of potential of escalation across the region in different parts of the world. So it is very urgent that the political leaders come together and find a way out, and that way out will be through political negotiations. I've just visited the European Gaza hospital, and the things I saw there is beyond anything that anyone should be in a position to describe. We can't turn away from what is evidently a moral failure in the face of the international community.
According to the Gaza Health Ministry, as of May 23, 2024, the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas has claimed 35,800 lives in the Gaza Strip, with 80,200 people injured. A report released by the United Nations Security Council on April 11 stated that this round of conflict has led to the deaths of 224 humanitarian workers, more than 3 times the number of fatalities recorded in any conflict within a year in history.
You were in Gaza last December, and you have made an assessment concluding, and I quote here, everything is collapsing. So how bad is the situation there, and how does the ICRC intend to step up its assistance?
I visited Gaza in mid-December. I visited the hospital, and I was shattered by what I saw. What I know today is that the situation since has become much, much worse. We are at the point where people are starving because of lack of access to food. They're not dying anymore only because of the impact of military operations. They are dying because they don't have food, they don't have water, and the medical system is collapsing fast.
Is there a moment that really shocked or struck you there?
Everything I saw was shattering, but what is always most difficult to bear are children. Children that have lost limbs, children that have lost limbs and their parents, that are alone in their suffering, and now children starving because of lack of food.
Well, this dire situation that you just described, actually it goes beyond what words can describe. So what do you think is the key in alleviating the sufferings, or what has described in your own words, humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza?
Look, our priority is to bring medical assistance. Our priority is to restore access to water. Our priority is to bring urgent assistance to the people. But equally, our priority is to support the release of the hostages still held in Gaza. We are urging all parties to continue negotiations and to find agreements. It is inhuman what we see in Gaza. It is unbearable to see how many people are affected by this conflict and how many people are in despair.
And this is why you have said previously that humanitarian will not solve problems that require real political commitments.
We work between politics, security, and development. We are trying to bridge the time when parties come back to the negotiation table, find an agreement. Now, this time when we bridge needs to be as short as possible. At the same time, we have to do our best to maintain channels of communication, to maintain that pathway to peace by providing humanitarian assistance and protection to all affected by armed violence. And this is why it is important to support humanitarian organizations like the ICRC, because we are strictly neutral, strictly impartial, and we only aim at bringing humanitarian assistance.
You know, neutrality is one of the key messages they're trying to deliver in this interview and some other occasions as well, because it is the fundamental principle for ICRC. But at the same time, this idea has faced scrutiny and criticism, especially in recent years. Doubts are emerging, and people are asking questions that does it still make sense to be neutral, or has it become facilitation for inaction? So in the face of those criticism, do you think neutrality is still or should remain as the cornerstone? And if so, how to guarantee it?
Now, what we've been observing lately is that this neutrality is the most criticized. We've always been criticized for our neutrality, without which we wouldn't be able to fulfill our mandate. The ICRC is 160 years old. It's the founding component of the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement. We were the first. Since day one, the ICRC has been neutral. Neutrality is, the precondition for providing humanitarian assistance in very complex situations, in situations of acute violence. We undertake a dialogue not only with all states, but also with hundreds of armed groups across the world on, what they need to do is to allow us to provide protection and humanitarian assistance to affected populations, but also what their obligations are under international humanitarian law, because war is not a lawless space. There are at all times rules that apply and that need to be respected. Now imagine if we took sides, if we said, oh, we support this side and not the other, and the other side is wrong. We would lose the opportunity to have access in situations of armed violence. You could see that the ICRC was needed in Gaza to support the implementation of the release of hostages, because you need an entity that is trusted by both parties for being impartial and not, working for one side only. This equidistance has to be preserved. Okay? So I'm calling on states to stand up and defend the neutrality of the ICRC, to defend the neutrality of humanitarian action. Because if we break that neutrality, we will not be able to operate anymore in the many contexts where nobody else can reach. So it's all linked at the end of the day to the respect for neutral action.
So it is about taking actions, not taking sides.
This is about taking action. When the world takes sides, we side with humanity. And this is precisely what we aim at.
And you're still going to stick to it?
We will always stick to this.
Madam President, people hate wars, but the conflict zones are usually where the ICRC can most make a difference to the lives and well-being of others. Since you took office, you have traveled to many conflict-affected areas, communities, and you have many thousands of your colleagues working in the field. How do you understand war and peace?
What we see today is when a conflict breaks out, we know that we will stay there for a long time. What we also see is that it takes generations to recover from a situation of conflict. You know, families are separated, they lose relatives. The trauma on both sides is not easily undone. What we insist today, given that we have to work in 100 situations of armed violence, is that states come together and remind themselves that the only pathway to peace is respecting the rules in war, to make sure that channels of communication remain, to ensure that the minimum of humanity is protected at all times. You know, dehumanization of the other is prevented so that we can find back to political stability. And nothing will resolve humanitarian problems better than political negotiations, political leadership, and the willingness to come back to making peace the norm and not conflict.
Just as you know, what you have quoted from negotiator before, that there are 100 steps to peace, and the first steps are humanitarian. So you believe this is the role of humanitarianism in conflict areas, right?
This is a line from a speech that I gave at Suzhou University when I visited China. It's an important line because it shows that humanitarian assistance maintains that pathway to peace. So we do have an important role to play, but we are not the final solution. The final solution has to be stability and the return to sustainable development, because only that will bring prosperity to the people. People don't want to live off humanitarian assistance. They want to be in control of their own lives.
Right, they want to get back to the right track of life.
They want to get back to peace and stability. They want to see their children back at school. They want to see a future for their children, and that is not possible in conflict.
Madam President, you made an official visit to China last September, and that was your very first official visit to the country since you took office. And a highlight of this trip is meeting with Chinese President Xi. And during the conversation, President Xi referred to humanitarianism as the greatest consensus that can unite different civilizations. How do you understand those shared values? And more importantly, what is your take on the vision of a community of shared future for mankind proposed by President Xi?
I look back to this meeting as a very important one. I was very pleased to not only learn how much attention the President pays to humanitarianism, but also to hear his strong commitment. They are firmly anchored in the Chinese traditions, but equally in others. So I see this connector in IHL that I maybe hadn't been so aware before I joined the ICRC, but now comes to the fore very clearly and consistently as I travel and as I find people suffering in situations of conflict. The importance of maintaining, you know, a humanitarian dialogue, the importance of trying to assist people in times of conflict, the importance of not letting them alone, the importance of not giving them the impression that, you know, the world doesn't care, is extremely essential.
What do you make of China's role in the international humanitarian cause and in holding the international humanitarian law in the past decades?
China is an important global and regional player, both politically and economically, but also in terms of peace and security. So we ask China to exercise its influence to promote the respect for international humanitarian law, because you have a powerful voice.
So during your meeting with President Xi, what impressed you the most?
I'm impressed by his knowledge of humanitarianism. I'm impressed by his commitment both to humanitarianism and to promoting the respect for international humanitarian law. I think we both discussed the importance of peace and stability, and we both discussed the fact that development requires peace and stability in order to bring prosperity to the people.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
You're watching CGTN with the latest market-moving headlines from around the world.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Established in 1863 and headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, the ICRC is devoted to provide assistance to people affected by conflicts and armed violence, and to actively promote laws that protect war victims. From 1864 to 1949, in Geneva, the international community enacted a series of international conventions on the protection of civilians and war crimes, collectively referred to as the Geneva Conventions, which are an important part of international humanitarian law. China was one of the first countries to join the Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols. On September 5, 2023, during her visit to China, Spoljaric attended the 49th Florence Nightingale Medal Award ceremony, where 7 Chinese nurses received the award. In her speech, Spoljaric expressed her respect for China's foreign medical assistance work, as this year marks the 60th anniversary of the dispatch of the first Chinese medical teams abroad. She also congratulated China for being the country with the highest number of recipients for the 49th Florence Nightingale Medal.
Well, last year, China also became the country with the most recipients of the 49th Florence Nightingale Award, and you were there at the award ceremony. So what do you think are the key contributors to this achievement recognized by ICRC and the international community?
I was really moved during that celebration because
Why was that?
Because I realized how anchored, the Red Cross is in Chinese society, and how proud these nurses were to receive the medal. It really meant a lot. Everyone who is working the humanitarian field comes to this work with enormous personal commitment, enormous personal dedication, and I saw during that ceremony, what I see every day, also amongst our own staff at the ICRC, not only professional dedication to implementing a humanitarian mandate, but also the personal conviction that this is something that they want to do. Mm-hmm. Because the nurses I met, like our own staff, they often take great risks. They go to dangerous places. They leave their families to bring assistance to others, to people they don't even know. And this is something that holds humanity together.
What do you think are the major takeaways from this China trip?
What I came back with is the reassurance that humanitarianism is firmly anchored in the Chinese tradition and culture. Mm-hmm. What I also took away from that trip is the reassurance that there is a high level of commitment to working with and supporting the International Committee of the Red Cross, and this cooperation is very important given China's role in the world. Now we look forward to deepening this conversation, and following my visit we have set up a number of cooperation platforms already. We have signed agreements, and I want to see that to continue, and so that very soon we'll be able also to exhibit positive, concrete outcomes in the field.
Is there some experiences or some impression that really stood out from your recollection of your memories in China?
I think every day I spent in China was a day where I had many conversations with many people. I had the opportunity to listen and to understand. I even did calligraphy at some point.
Yes,
and
I saw that at Suzhou University. How does it feel?
I enjoyed that very much. It has an appeasing element, you know, It's something deeply philosophical also. One of the key elements was really that connection between international humanitarian law and maintaining a pathway to peace that I spoke about at the academy in Suzhou. Following my visit, we continued building on this nexus, and we continued elaborating on what exactly the contribution of humanitarianism is in maintaining peace and stability in the longer term.
You visited the very first teaching and research institution dedicated to humanitarian education in Suzhou University. So share with us a little bit about the significance of this institution and what can we expect from it?
It's a remarkable institution and very nicely located in an environment that promotes thinking and that promotes innovation and that is committed to working with us on finding ways to enhance respect for international humanitarian law, but also to finding out how we can better respond to the new challenges and to the new tools and means in warfare to make sure that we continue to implement international humanitarian law, both in cyberspace, but also against the background of new technologies that greatly change the way wars can be conducted.
Well, China has also become a very important hub for procurement and innovative solutions for ICRC, providing essential supplies like tents or jerry cans and also solar lamps and different kinds of other goods. So what do you think are the biggest competitive edge of those made in China goods?
China is an important procurement hub for the ICRC. The elements we procure are used in dozens of countries around the world. What we need as humanitarian providers are quality material that is adapted to humanitarian context, to the needs of the people, that respond best possibly to improving their situation. So we also look forward to working with Chinese institutions, especially also researchers, in seeing how we can use the innovative potential of China to design responses and to design the material and equipment that will help us, bring humanitarian assistance or deliver humanitarian assistance more effectively. But as you can see, it's already the case that much of our material is procured in your country.
Well, finally, Madam President, let's talk a little bit about yourself. You are the very first female president in the history of ICRC, but you have experienced a rather rough start with the Constitution's most severe financial crisis that led to job cuts and deduction of budgets, alongside this unprecedented proliferation of humanitarian crisis. So a turbulent period plus a turbulent world. What's your strategic vision to weather those challenges?
It was a challenging year, my first year as president of the ICRC, but it was also a rewarding year because we managed to overcome a crisis that was fundamental, that was very destabilizing for our personnel, and we are coming out of this crisis with renewed confidence in the validity and importance of our mandate. And the ICRC is an organization with close to 20,000 staff, where I sense this strong alignment with the mission. We have one of the strongest North Stars probably for our work. We want to preserve humanity. I mean, what else would you want to do if you had the choice? And you know, in spite of the crisis that we went through last year, I have never felt that our personnel was peeling away from the mission. You know, the strong belief in the validity of the Geneva Convention still today and for the next 160 years to come.
For the young people who might want to working in the field of humanitarianism, what quality do you think is the most important thing?
Young children, they have to first and foremost be given choices and options. They have to be given the support to build self-confidence and to have the courage to do what interests them and to have the courage to do what they're good at. You know, humanitarian assistance is a good example. We need doctors, we need engineers, we need communication specialists, we need agriculture specialists nowadays because of the way we provide humanitarian assistance in difficult situations.
All walks of life.
So anything you learn, it doesn't matter. In every field you can contribute to a higher good. So it's not the branch or the subject that you study, it's the commitment with which you do that and the broader setting in which you see your actions.
Madam President, it was a great pleasure talking to you and greatly appreciated for sharing with us your insights and your understanding of humanitarianism and all those global issues. Thank you so much.
I thank you.
During the exclusive interview, President Spoljaric said that humanitarian can be the first steps to coming back to sustainable solutions. But final solution has to be peace and stability. She also commended China for its contributions to the international humanitarian cause over the past decades and looks forward to further enhancing cooperation with China and jointly promoting global peace and development. With that, we're going to wrap up this edition of Leaders Talk. I'm Zhou Yun reporting from Geneva. Thank you for watching and see you next time.